Accounting cycle step number 10. Reversing journal entries are journalized and posted. A reversing entry is a journal entry which is the exact opposite of a related adjusting entry made at the end of the period. It is basically a bookkeeping technique made to simplify the recording of regular transactions in the next accounting period. It should be emphasized that reversing entries are optional. So meaning, kung optional lang pala ang reversing entries, pwede mo siyang gawin, pwede mo ring hindi gawin. Mamaya na lang ang ating extended explanation kung bakit optional ang reversing entries. Generally, a reversing entry should be made for any adjusting entry that increase an asset or a liability account. Okay. So, ang reversing entry, is, lang siya, i-reverse lang natin yung previous na journal entry. So, let's say meron tayong adjusting entry na salaries expense 3,000. Example lang. Credit salaries payable 3,000. Kapag kagawan natin yan ng reversing entry, i-reverse lang natin itong mismong adjusting entry. Meaning, yung debit magiging credit sa reversing entry and yung credit sa adjusting entry magiging debit. So, pagbabalik na rin lang natin itong entry na ginawa natin. So, ang reversing journal entry nan would be debit salaries payable 3,000, credit salaries expense 3,000 pesos. So, binaliktad lang natin yung entry na ginawa sa adjusting entry. And sa ating discussion ng accounting cycle, so napakarami na nating discussion about accounting cycle. So, from step 1, so ngayon ito, nasa last step na tayo, which is reversing entries. Marami na tayong ginagawang mga journal entries. Remember, may journal entries tayo sa accounting cycle step number 2. Yung nilagay natin mismo sa journal. Meron tayong ginawang adjusting entries sa accounting cycle step number 7. And meron din tayong ginawang closing entries which is, or closing journal entries which is under naman ng accounting cycle step 8. So, alin ba yung mga nire-reverse na entry? Dahil hindi naman lahat ng journal entry na ginawa natin, whether adjusting entry or closing entry or regular journal entry sa accounting cycle step 2 is nire-reverse. Ang nire-reverse lang, eto, ulitin natin itong statement na to. Generally, a reversing entry should be made for any adjusting entry. Meaning, yung mga adjusting entry lang, yung mga subject or subject sa reversing entry. And but hindi lahat ng adjusting entry ay nire-reverse. Ang mga adjusting entry lang daw na nire-reverse ay yung may mga effect na increased in asset or liability account. Okay, magre-review muna tayo ngayon ng adjusting entries. So, remember yung adjusting entries na encounter natin to sa accounting cycle step number 5 and number 6. And meron tayo ditong kompletong playlist ng lahat ng adjusting entries. Nandun ang lahat ng discussion. So, re-reviewin lang natin. Adjusting entries. Okay. First, yung mga adjusting entries na under ng deferrals. Tandaan nyo pa ang meaning ng deferrals? Ang deferrals is kung expense, ito yung mga expenses already paid but not yet incurred, or kung income naman, ito naman yung mga cash received or income already received but not yet earned. So meron tayong kompletong discussion ito sa ating playlist. So kung gusto nyo panoorin, kung gusto nyo mag-recall, so balikan nyo na lang yun. Sa deferrals, meron tayong adjustment under ng prepaid expenses, o ito yung mga expenses na already paid but not yet incurred. Okay, ano yung adjusting entry nito? Ano yung adjusting entry niya pagdating ng end of accounting period? Tama, depende. Depende pa yon kung siya ay, kung anong method ang ginamit. Kung expense method or asset method. Kapag expense method, ang adjusting entry pagdating ng end of accounting period would be debit prepaid expense, ayan, credit expense account or any appropriate expense account. So yan yung entry. Kapag asset method naman, ang entry ng adjusting entry is debit expense or any appropriate expense account, credit prepaid expense. Yan, ganyan yung entry. Mag-review tayo adjusting entry. Ano pa yung mga deferrals? Yung tinatawag nating deferred income, or yung other term dito minsan unearned income, unearned revenue, deferred revenue, pare-parehas lang naman yun. Okay, ano yung adjusting entry nito pagdating ng end of accounting period? Tama, depende din kung anong method. Meron tong method na income method, tsaka ano pa yung isang method? Liability. Method. Depende sa kung ano ang ginamit na method. Pag income method, ang adjusting entry would be debit appropriate income account, debit appropriate income account, credit deferred income. And kapag liability method naman ang ginamit, entry would be debit deferred income, credit income, appropriate income account. Ano pa yung mga under ng deferrals? Yung depreciation. So, depreciation, so ito yung mga related sa property and equipment. Dahil kapag bumibili tayo ng property and equipment, which is normally yan yung mga long-lived assets or yung mga assets na matatagal ang buhay, na nagbe-benefit sa iba't ibang accounting periods. Kapag bumibili tayo ng property and equipment, we are basically prepaying for the usefulness of that asset. Kaya to nagfo-fall sa deferrals. So, ang entry kapag depreciation ng adjustment would be debit to depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation. Okay, tapos na tayo sa deferrals. Next yung, kung may deferrals, merong yung accruals. Okay, pag accruals, so kapag income, ito yung mga income already earned but not yet collected. At kapag expense naman, ito naman yung mga expenses already incurred but not yet paid. Accruals, so first example, accrued income. Accrued income. Ano yung adjusting journal entry under ng accrued income? Debit, receivable, appropriate receivable account, credit, appropriate income account. Yan, accrued income. Kung may accrued income, meron ding accrued expense. Okay, ano naman kapag accrued expense? Debit, appropriate expense account, credit, payable account. Ayan. And last, yun, isa pang nagfo-fall under accrual na adjusting entry is yung accrual of bad debts or yung accrual ng doubtful accounts. So, ang entry to record accrual of bad debts would be debit to doubtful accounts expense or bad debts expense, credit allowance for doubtful accounts. Okay, ayan. Tapos na tayo sa ating summary ng adjusting entries. Generally, a reversing entry should be made for any adjusting entry that increase an asset or a liability account. So, ibig sabihin, ang reversing entries is ginagawa lang siya sa mga adjusting entries na may effect na increase in asset or increase in liability. So, lagay natin dito, reversing journal entries is yung mga adjusting journal entries with increase in asset and increase in liability. Okay. Kung yung mga adjusting entry na may increase in asset and increase in liability, yung subject sa reversing entries, alin dito yung mga adjusting entries na subject sa reversing entries? Unahin natin to. Adjustment ng prepaid expense under expense method. Debit, prepaid expense, credit expense. The entry involves a debit to an asset account. Ito. So, meaning, since may debit yan sa asset account, may increase in asset account yung effect ng entry na ito. Therefore, ito ay subject sa reversing entry. So, bibilugan natin yung mga entries na subject sa reversing entries. Bakit siya subject sa reversing entries? Dahil meron siyang effect na increase sa asset. Dahil meron siyang entry na debit, prepaid expense. Asset method. So, debit, expense, credit, prepaid expense. So, subject sa reversing entry? Hindi. Kasi wala namang epekto ng increase in asset or increase in liability. Income method. sa deferred income. Debit income, credit, deferred income account. May effect ba siya sa asset? Wala siyang effect. May effect ba siya sa liability? Meron. Ano ang effect sa liability? Padagdag, increase. Since na iyan ay increase sa liability, therefore, itong adjusting entry under income method na ito is subject din sa reversing entry. Kaya ito, adjustment under liability method. Debit deferred income, credit income. Subject sa reversing entry? Hindi. Kasi although may effect siya sa liability, dahil may debit deferred income dito, pero pabawas ang effect. So, hindi yan kasama. Depreciation. Expense, credit accumulated depreciation. Subject sa reversing entry? Hindi. Ang effect nito sa asset is pabawas dahil na i-increase ang accumulated depreciation, which is contra asset account. Sa liability, wala siyang effect. Accruals. So, accrued income, debit receivable, credit income. May effect sa asset? Meron. Padagdag. So, subject yan sa reversing entries. Bakit siya nagka-effect sa asset na padagdag at bakit siya subject sa reversing entry? Dahil merong debit na receivable. Nag-increase ang receivable, nag-increase ang asset account. Accrued expense. Subject sa reversing entry. Okay, tingnan natin. May effect ba siya sa liability? Meron. Nadagdagan ang payable account, credit. So, kasama to sa reversing entries. Accrual of bad debts, doubtful accounts, allowance for bad debts, credit. Subject sa reversing entries? Hindi. Wala siyang effect sa liability and ang effect niya sa asset ay pa-decrease. Bakit? Dahil credit, allowance for doubtful accounts, ito ay example ng contra asset account. So, pag nag-i-increase yan, nababawasan ng asset. So, ibig sabihin lang, meron tayong 4 na adjusting entries na subject sa reversing entries. So, ibig sabihin lang nun, yung mga adjusting entries subject to reversing entries ay una yung prepaid expense provided na expense method ang gamit na method. Ito. Number 2, adjustment ng deferred income or unearned income provided na ang method ay income method. Kapag liability method ang ginamit, hindi siya subject sa reversing entry. Number 3, yung adjustment ng accrued income and number 4, ito, accrued expense. So, may 4 na adjusting entries na subject sa reversing entries. Okay, i-apply natin itong ginawa nating note dito sa mga adjusting entries na ginawa natin under accounting cycle step number 7. Aalamin natin kung alin dito yung mga subject sa reversing entries. Letter A, subject sa reversing entries. Hindi. Although, adjustment niyan involving prepaid expense, pero hindi siya expense method. And ang entry is decrease in asset account. Decrease of asset account. So, hindi siya subject sa reversing entry. Ganon din yung number 2. Hindi rin subject sa reversing entry. Credit prepaid insurance. Number 3, hindi rin siya subject sa reversing entry. Credit supplies account. Decrease in asset. Letter D, depreciation expense. Hindi din subject. Letter E, hindi rin siya subject sa reversing entry, depreciation. Letter F, subject sa reversing entry. Hindi. Dahil hindi naman nag-increase ang liability account sa letter F. Letter G, subject sa reversing entries. Yan, ito. Subject na to sa reversing journal entries. Bakit? Yun, accrued expense. Ito yun. And isa pa, nag-increase ang liability account. Letter H, subject sa reversing entries. Subject din. So, same siya ng letter G. Yan ay accrued expense. Letter I, debit accounts receivable, credit consulting revenues. Subject sa reversing entries. Yes, subject din yan sa reversing entries. Ito yun, accrued income. And isa pa, nag-increase ang asset account. So, ito, subject din sa reversing entries. So, meron tayong tatlong adjusting entries na subject sa reversing entries.